Is this a daycare or a boxing gym? Diana Rivera's voice cut through Elite Fight Academy in downtown Miami. Someone call security. We have a lost child. The sound of speed bags stopped instantly. Every eye turned to Zara Baptiste, standing just 5'2" in the doorway, clutching a crumpled enrollment form. Her faded Target sneakers looked alien against the gym's $100,000 Italian marble floors where millionaire champions trained daily. Diana Rivera, undefeated in 31 professional fights, social media sensation with 4.2 million followers, was already filming everything for her Instagram. At 25, she'd built her empire on keeping it real, which usually meant humiliating anyone she saw as beneath her. Her latest post had 950,000 likes, a picture of her posing in designer gear with the caption, "Some women are born lionesses, others are born prey." And if you're already hooked by this clash of worlds, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next will redefine everything you think you know about real strength versus fake confidence. But here's something most people didn't know about Diana. Behind the perfectly curated Instagram posts and designer athleisure wear was a woman who'd never actually faced real adversity. Born into wealth in Coral Gables, private trainers since age 7, Olympic-level facilities handed to her on a silver platter. Her undefeated record was carefully managed. Hand-picked opponents, favorable judging, fights arranged by her powerful manager father who owned half the boxing commissions in Florida. Diana's entire identity was built on being untouchable, literally and figuratively. She'd never been hungry, never been desperate, never had to choose between eating and training. Her biggest struggle had been deciding which luxury car to drive to the gym. I have an appointment," Zara said quietly, her Haitian accent making her voice barely audible over the gym's ambient noise. "For the youth scholarship program." Diana's laugh echoed off the floor-to-ceiling mirrors. "Youth program? Sweetie, this is where real fighters train. Olympic medalists, world champions, not whatever charity case you walked out of." What Diana couldn't see, what privilege always blinds people to, was the steel beneath Zara's quiet exterior. While Diana was posing for magazines, Zara had been surviving. While Diana was counting likes, Zara was counting every scar as a lesson learned. But here's what nobody at Elite Fight Academy understood. Behind those quiet eyes was a story that would shake their perfect marble world to its foundation. Zara Baptiste had been in Miami exactly 4 months, 19 days, and 14 hours. She counted every moment since leaving Port-au-Prince with nothing but a backpack and her grandmother's blessing. 3 jobs, McDonald's from 5 a.m., cleaning offices until 2 a.m., weekend catering gigs, every penny saved, every meal skipped, all for this moment. But let me tell you about the journey that brought her here. In Port-au-Prince, Zara wasn't just another kid dreaming of America. She was l'Orage, the storm, a legend in underground fighting circles where children fought not for trophies, but for survival. At age 12, when Diana was getting her first professional photo shoot, Zara was wrapping her hands with torn fabric and stepping into makeshift rings constructed from car tires and rope. The rules were simple. Winner eats, loser goes hungry. There were no referees, no medical staff, no safety regulations, just pure, raw determination to survive another day. Her trainer wasn't some former Olympic champion with a Wikipedia page. It was her grandfather, Jean-Baptiste, a man who'd learned to fight during Haiti's political upheavals, who understood that boxing wasn't a sport. It was a weapon against hopelessness. "Make them respect you," he would tell her before every fight. Not through fear, but through excellence so undeniable that even hatred had to bow to it. What nobody in that gym knew was that Zara carried more than just dreams. Hidden beneath her clothes were scars that told stories. A knife wound from defending her brother from gang recruiters, burns from the factory fire that killed her father, and hands that had been wrapped in newspaper instead of proper boxing tape for 3 years straight. Each scar was a victory. Each victory was a step closer to this moment. "The program is legitimate," Coach Elena Vasquez interrupted, emerging with a folder. "Miss Baptiste qualified through the city's athletic department. Back off, Diana." Elena Vasquez knew talent when she saw it. 35 years in boxing, from the amateur ranks in Mexico to training world champions in Miami. She'd seen thousands of hopefuls walk through those doors, but something about Zara's application had made her pause. The girl's amateur record from Haiti wasn't just impressive, it was perfect. 23 fights, 23 wins, most by knockout. But more than that, Elena recognized something in Zara's eyes during their initial interview. It was the same look she'd seen in the mirror 40 years ago when she was a young woman fighting her way out of poverty in Guadalajara. The look of someone who understood that losing wasn't just disappointing, it was devastating. But Diana's eyes had already lit up with cruel inspiration. Her phone was still recording, and she could smell viral content brewing. Comments were already flooding in. "Yo, Diana, destroy this nobody. Send her back to kiddie class. Show her what a real fighter looks like." What Diana's followers didn't realize was that they were about to witness the greatest upset in social media boxing history. They thought they were tuning in to watch another ritual humiliation, another example of Diana's superiority. Instead, they were about to see the precise moment when privilege met preparation, when arrogance collided with authentic skill. "You know what, coach? I have a better idea." She sauntered toward Zara like a predator circling wounded prey. "You want to train here so bad? Prove you belong." In the corner, something caught Miguel Santos's attention. A former bantamweight contender from the Dominican Republic, he noticed what others missed. Zara's feet weren't placed like a civilian's. Her hands, though relaxed, were positioned with unconscious precision. Her breathing was controlled, rhythmic, purposeful. Miguel had grown up in similar circumstances, Santiago's toughest neighborhoods, where reputation was currency and respect was earned one fight at a time. He recognized the subtle signs that separated real fighters from gym pretenders. The way Zara's eyes tracked movement without obviously watching. How her weight distribution suggested someone comfortable with violence. The calluses on her knuckles that spoke of years hitting surfaces much harder than padded bags. Around the gym, other experienced fighters were beginning to notice too. Clint Thompson, a former cruiserweight champion, nudged his training partner. "Watch her stance," he whispered. "That's not recreational boxing posture." Isabella Cruz, a current bantamweight contender, felt her own competitive instincts stirring. Something about Zara's presence was shifting the energy in the room. It was subtle, but fighters develop a sixth sense about these things. The girl wasn't just confident, she was dangerous. "3 rounds, you and me, right now." Diana's smile was razor-sharp. "If you somehow last, you can stay. When you don't—" She made a dismissive gesture toward the door. Eleanor stepped forward. "Diana, this is unnecessary." "Coach, relax." Diana waved her off. "I'm being generous. Usually I'd just have security escort her out." But Elena was beginning to understand that this wasn't generosity. It was a catastrophic miscalculation. She'd seen Diana spar hundreds of times, always against carefully selected opponents who wouldn't embarrass her. This felt different. This felt like watching someone step into quicksand while insisting they knew how to swim. "Okay," Zara said simply. The single word carried weight that nobody understood yet. It wasn't the okay of resignation or fear. It was the okay of someone who'd been waiting for this moment their entire life. While Diana was performing for her audience, Zara quietly made her way to the women's changing area. There she encountered Sofia Martinez, Elena's assistant trainer and former WBC featherweight champion. "You don't have to do this," Sofia said softly. "Diana is... she's vicious. She'll hurt you just to make content." As Zara changed into borrowed gym clothes, Sofia noticed details that made her pause. The girl's arms weren't just thin, they were wiry, defined in a way that spoke of years of serious training. Her hands had calluses in very specific places, and when she moved, there was a fluidity that couldn't be faked. But it was more than physical conditioning that Sofia noticed. It was Zara's ritual, the methodical way she stretched, the precise manner in which she tested the gloves, the quiet meditation before competition. These weren't the habits of a novice or pretender. These were the ingrained behaviors of someone who'd been preparing for battles their entire life. "Sophia," Zara said quietly, testing the borrowed gloves. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What do you think makes someone truly dangerous in the ring?" Sophia considered. "Speed, power, technique, ring IQ." Zara shook her head. "In Haiti, we learned something different. The most dangerous fighter isn't the strongest or the fastest." She looked toward the gym. "It's the one who's already died inside and been reborn. The one who survived their worst nightmare and came out harder." Sophia felt a chill run down her spine. She'd heard similar words before, from her own grandmother, who'd survived the Mexican Revolution. Words that came from a place deeper than sport, from a place where fighting wasn't entertainment, but existence. Outside, Diana was putting on a show, hitting the heavy bag with thunderous combinations, filming herself with perfectly angled shots, trash-talking to her followers. But there was something frantic about her performance now. Maybe it was the way the gym had gone unusually quiet. Maybe it was how even her most loyal supporters seemed to be watching with curiosity rather than certainty. For the first time in years, Diana felt like she had to prove something rather than simply display it. "See, what people don't understand," Diana said to her phone camera, "is that women's boxing isn't just about skill, it's about natural hierarchy. Some women are born champions." She flipped her perfectly braided hair. "Others are born to be footnotes in our highlight reels." What viewers couldn't see was Diana's team scrambling behind the cameras. Her manager, Robert Sterling, was already calculating damage control scenarios. Her social media manager was preparing multiple post-fight narrative strategies. Even her personal photographer seemed nervous, adjusting equipment with unusual urgency. They all sensed what Diana couldn't or wouldn't acknowledge. This wasn't going to be another easy content creation session. This felt like an actual test, and they weren't prepared for their golden girl to face a real examination of her abilities. When Zara emerged from the changing room, something fundamental had changed. The quiet, nervous girl was gone. In her place stood someone else entirely, someone who moved with deadly purpose. Miguel Santos felt his blood run cold. He'd seen that transformation before, in his hometown of Santiago, in underground fights where losing meant not eating for a week. The switch from survival mode to predator mode. Around the gym, conversations stopped. Even the background music seemed to lower in volume. It was as if everyone instinctively understood that they were about to witness something significant, though none of them could have predicted just how significant it would be. "Ready to learn your place, charity case?" Diana asked mockingly. "Always ready to learn," Zara replied. But her voice had changed too. The nervous tremor was gone, replaced by something that made several veteran fighters unconsciously step back. It was the voice of someone who'd learned to speak through violence, who'd discovered that respect wasn't given, it was taken. Elena reluctantly agreed to referee. 3 rounds, 16-ounce gloves, just sparring. As they touched gloves in the center of the ring, something in Zara's eyes made Diana hesitate. Her grip was firm, controlled, and her eyes held something Diana had never seen before, the absolute absence of fear. Not bravery, not confidence, but something deeper. The look of someone who'd already accepted that they might die in this ring and made peace with it. For the first time in her professional career, Diana Rivera felt a chill run down her spine. The bell rang. Diana came out swinging immediately, throwing a combination designed to end fights quickly, a jab cross hook sequence that had knocked out 15 professional opponents. Every single punch hit nothing but air. What happened next would be talked about in women's boxing circles for years. Zara moved like smoke, like shadow, like water flowing around stones. She was always exactly where Diana's fists weren't, her feet dancing with a rhythm that seemed almost supernatural. "What the hell?" Diana muttered, her confidence cracking. The gym fell silent except for leather cutting through air and feet dancing on canvas. Even the most experienced fighters present had never seen defensive movement like this. It was poetry, written in motion. Diana tried again. A devastating uppercut followed by a cross that had knocked out 3 opponents in her last 5 fights. Zara leaned back exactly 6 inches, just enough. The punches whistled past her face, and in that moment of Diana's overextension, Zara struck. The first counter came from nowhere, a lightning-fast jab that snapped Diana's head back. The second followed before she could process the first. By the third, the golden girl of Miami boxing was stumbling backward, her eyes wide with genuine shock. "What the hell is happening?" Diana roared, blood dripping from her nose onto her custom-designed sports top for the first time in 3 years. "Do you understand now?" Zara said, circling her with the patience of a shark. Her voice was calm, measured, all the more terrifying for its control. This wasn't just a fight anymore. This was a reckoning. Diana wiped blood from her nose, her social media bravado cracking like old paint. "You got lucky. 1 punch means nothing." But her voice betrayed her. The supreme confidence was gone, replaced by something desperate and ugly. She charged forward with everything she had, a wild combination fueled by desperation and wounded pride. What followed was a masterclass in controlled violence. Zara moved like she was performing a dance choreographed in nightmares, every step planned 3 moves ahead. This wasn't raw talent. This was years of training in places where mistakes meant death. The combination that followed was poetry written in pain. 10 punches in 4 seconds, each one finding its mark with surgical precision. Jab to the solar plexus, cross to the temple, hook to the liver, uppercut to the chin that sent her mouthguard flying into the 3rd row. Diana Rivera, undefeated in 31 professional fights, social media queen with 4.2 million followers, hit the canvas like a demolished building. 9, 10, it's over! The crowd erupted. Half were cheering, half were filming, all were witnessing something they'd never forget. Zara walked over to where Diana sat, her empire crumbling in real time as notifications flooded her phone. She knelt down, speaking softly enough that only she could hear. "Where I come from, we have a saying, beautiful seeds don't guarantee a harvest." She stood slowly. "Pretty faces and followers don't make you strong. Hunger does, desperation does. Having nothing left to lose and everything to prove does." Now let me pause here to tell you something important. In most stories, this would be the end. The underdog wins, the bully loses, credits roll. But real life, and the best stories, don't end with a single victory. What happened in the minutes immediately following the knockout was almost as dramatic as the fight itself. Diana's team rushed into the ring, not to check on her condition, but to stop the filming. Her manager was already on his phone with crisis management consultants. Her social media team was frantically trying to delete the live stream, but it was too late. The footage had already been screen recorded by dozens of viewers. Meanwhile, Miguel Santos approached Zara with the respect reserved for true warriors. "Where did you train?" he asked in Spanish, somehow knowing she'd understand. "In the streets of Port-au-Prince," she replied in English, her accent carrying the weight of her homeland. He nodded with the understanding that only comes from shared experience. "I knew it. You fight like someone who's been hungry." Around them, other fighters were introducing themselves, offering training partnerships, asking about her background. The dynamic in the gym had completely shifted. 15 minutes ago, Zara had been an intruder. Now she was the most interesting person in the room. By nightfall, Storm Baptiste was trending worldwide. The video had been shared 150,000 times in the first hour. Comments poured in. "Did you see that footwork? That's not luck. That's years of training." "She destroyed her. Where did she come from?" This is what real boxing looks like. Technique over Instagram fame. But the most significant responses came from the boxing community itself. Legendary trainer Freddie Roach tweeted, "That defensive movement reminds me of young Floyd. This girl is special." Former champion Layla Ali posted, "Technique, power, heart, the complete package. Welcome to the sport, young warrior." Meanwhile, Diana's sponsors started calling, none with good news. "Diana, we need to discuss your brand alignment with our values. The optics of this situation are challenging. We're reviewing all partnerships pending further investigation." The financial implications were immediate and devastating. Within 48 hours, Diana had lost endorsement deals worth $2.3 million annually. Her signature shoe line was discontinued. The reality TV show about her life was cancelled before filming began. But perhaps more damaging than the financial losses was the psychological impact. For someone whose entire identity was built on being unbeatable, untouchable, superior, being thoroughly dominated by someone she'd dismissed as insignificant shattered more than just her record. Zara sat in the corner of the gym, surrounded by fighters who wanted to know her story. Eleanor approached with a contract. "The scholarship program," she said. "It's yours. Full training, access to everything. But I have a feeling you're beyond scholarships now." She was right. By sunset, Zara's phone, an old Android with a cracked screen, was ringing with offers. Golden Boy promotions, Top Rank, Under Armour, Netflix. But these weren't just standard boxing contracts. Promoters were offering development deals typically reserved for Olympic medalists. Streaming services wanted documentary rights to her story. Fashion brands saw her as the perfect ambassador for their authentic athlete campaigns. The offers were staggering: seven-figure signing bonuses, percentage of pay-per-view revenue, creative control over her image and narrative. The kind of deals that Diana, despite all her social media success, had never been offered. But the most important call came from her grandmother in Port-au-Prince. "I knew you would do it," her grandmother said through tears. "Your father's spirit guided your hands tonight." For the first time since arriving in Miami, Zara cried, not from sadness but from the overwhelming realization that every sacrifice had led to this moment of vindication. 1 year later, the contrasts couldn't be more stark. Diana Rivera was teaching beginners classes at a community center gym, her social media following a fraction of its former size. Her last post, a reflective piece about learning humility, showed the beginnings of genuine growth. Her journey back would be long, but it had begun with acceptance. But here's something beautiful about Diana's story that most people missed. Losing everything forced her to discover who she was beyond the image, beyond the followers, beyond the manufactured perfection. For the first time in her life, she was training not for cameras or content, but for the pure love of the sport. Her new students, kids from low-income families who couldn't afford elite fight academy, were learning from someone who finally understood what it meant to be hungry, to be doubted, to have to prove yourself when nobody believes in you. Zara Storm Baptiste was preparing for her first title fight, a significant achievement for someone who'd been professional for less than a year. The purse was substantial but not outlandish, enough to buy her family a comfortable home in Miami and establish a small boxing academy in Port-au-Prince. But success hadn't changed Zara's approach to training. She still arrived first and left last, still wrapped her hands with the same methodical precision she'd learned in Haiti, still carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who'd already survived their worst fears. Her first act after signing wasn't to celebrate. It was to establish the Storm Foundation, providing free boxing training, education, and support for immigrant children across South Florida. During the grand opening ceremony, Zara held the microphone with the same hands that had rewritten her own story. "This isn't about revenge," she said, her voice carrying across the new facility. "It's about respect. It's about proving that strength doesn't come from privilege or followers or fancy equipment. It comes from the absolute refusal to accept that others can define your limits. When someone underestimates you based on your size, your accent, your background, you have a choice. You can let it break you, or you can use it as fuel to become unbreakable." In the audience, Eleanor wiped away tears she didn't try to hide. She'd trained champions for decades, but she'd never seen anyone transform humiliation into inspiration with such grace and purpose. When Storm Baptiste won her first championship belt 8 months later, the first person she thanked wasn't her trainer or her family. "I want to thank everyone who tried to put me down," she said, holding the belt above her head as the crowd roared. "You taught me that true power doesn't come from where we're born or how much money we have. It comes from an absolute refusal to accept that others can decide what we're capable of achieving." Diana watched that fight from her modest apartment, surrounded by students from her youth program. When the referee raised Zara's hand, she finally understood the difference between talent and greatness, between being famous and being respected. Coach Diana, one of her young students, asked, "Do you think we could ever be champions like her?" Diana smiled, genuinely for the first time in years. If you're willing to work as hard as she did, if you're willing to get back up every time you get knocked down, if you're willing to prove yourself when nobody believes in you, then yes, you can be anything you want to be. The smallest people sometimes cast the biggest shadows. Those shadows can reshape entire landscapes, and those landscapes can become fertile ground for dreams that others said could never grow. If this story of courage conquering arrogance moved you, remember that every champion was once a contender who refused to give up. Every legend was once a beginner who refused to give in. And every storm was once just a cloud that refused to disappear. The only difference between a dream and reality is the refusal to let anyone else decide what you're worth. So here's my challenge to you. And this isn't just about subscribing, though I hope you do. This is about your life. What limitation that someone else placed on you are you going to shatter today? What person who underestimated you are you going to prove wrong? What storm are you going to become instead of remaining just another cloud? Because every single person watching this has been underestimated by someone. Every single one of you has had someone look at your background, your appearance, your circumstances, and decide what you're capable of achieving. The question isn't whether you'll face a Diana Rivera in your life. You will. The question is, will you walk away or will you step into that ring and show them that some storms don't just pass through, they reshape the entire landscape? If this story lit a fire in you, if it reminded you that your greatest advantage might be being underestimated, then subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because every week, we share stories of people who refuse to let others write their limitations, who turned their supposed weaknesses into unstoppable strengths. Your Diana Rivera is waiting. Your moment to become the storm is coming. The only question left is, are you ready to stop being the person others expect you to be and start becoming the champion you were born to become? Subscribe if you're ready to unleash your inner storm. The world needs to see what you're really made of. Bye for now.